Should I use Zillow rental applications? This is a question that we get from landlords all the time, and it's a really commonly used product. And the truth is, if you're using Zillow rental applications, you're more likely to get more applications and to get those applications faster. This is a low friction option for tenants to use when searching for rental properties. It's a portable application, which is great for tenants. It means that they can use the same application to apply for multiple properties. It's a pretty affordable application for tenants. Most property management companies or apartments or private owners are going to charge more than what Zillow charges. So there's definitely some advantages to the Zillow rental application, but there's also some gaps to the Zillow rental application. And if you're a landlord or someone who's leasing your property out yourself, or even if you're a newer property manager, there are some things you want to be aware of and keep an eye out for before choosing to rely on Zillow rental applications. And I'm going to show you exactly what those are. And before we get started and dive in, I want to remind you to please like and subscribe if you're interested in landlording and property management tips, because we have new information weekly to help you be more profitable and earn more money and manage risk with your properties and your rentals. And to that end, we also have a rental verification checklist that you can use. If you visit cdogmgt.com, you'll be able to download this checklist and use it in managing your own rental to help you identify some of the blind spots that you might not be aware of in Zillow's current rental application. Now, as we dive in, you can see just anecdotally that there are some comments and discussion about this on the web. This is a really good Reddit thread. It says, "Are Zillow applications any good? What do you use?" You can see some of the comments. No, avoid Zillow. They sent me an applicant that committed fraud. Their background check was incorrect. This happened to me. Dude had attempted murder on his rap sheet, and Zillow said he had no criminal background. Another one here says, no, you can easily lie. Do not use Zillow. Another one here says, currently have a rental listed in California, received 2 apps. The pay stubs were from 2 differently titled companies, yet the company ID was the same. Someone pointed me to paystubsnow.com, and on that site, you can quickly forge a pay stub. And I just want to click back here real quick. You can see actually on this Reddit thread, ironically, Zillow is advertising Zillow Home Loans. And this is something that as a landlord, you definitely want to be aware of. Zillow is in the business of selling real estate connections. So as a landlord, it's definitely in your best interest to keep a tenant in your home and keep them in your home for a long time, because vacancy and leasing and screening is all expensive. There's repairs and maintenance in between and costs associated with all of that. There's also the potential for security deposit disputes and all sorts of issues. So if you get a tenant into your home, you want to keep them there long-term ideally. And you do that through excellent maintenance service, providing really easy methods for them to make payments, making it really easy for them to stay year after year through quick lease renewal process. So when you're looking at a company like Zillow and you're giving them access to your property address, the tenant name and information, because the tenant's coming from Zillow, the lease start date and lease end date, it would make sense for a publicly traded company. In fact, you would argue they're even obligated to, bound to their shareholders to try and convert your tenant into a home buyer as your tenant begins to approach the end of their lease. So maybe 120 days before the end of the lease, Zillow has all the right information to start reaching out and sending emails with some homes that they know the tenant can afford. They can make attractive offers to the tenant through Zillow Home Loans. And like you see here, if Zillow is able to turn your tenant into a home buyer, well, now they make a nice commission on that mortgage. A lot of times it's somewhere between 1% of the loan amount up to 2.5%, or sometimes 3% of the loan amount. Additionally, Zillow can sell that tenant lead, that tenant opportunity, to a real estate agent. And in our market, the average or median home sale price is about $450,000. So the average commission is about $12,500. Zillow stands to make $4,000 to $5,000 from selling your tenant as a lead to a real estate agent. So if they get a $300,000 or $400,000 loan at 1.5%, that's $6,000. And then if they sell that lead to a real estate agent, That's another $5,000. So Zillow is very much invested or incentivized, I should say, to turn your tenant living in your house into a home buyer. And then they can turn around and charge you to relist your property for rent and turn around and charge new tenants more application fees, etc. And the cycle continues. So just stop and think for a second. Do you want Zillow to have all this information? None of this is really the point of this video today, though. That's just kind of a side look and something else to think about. But we're talking specifically about the Zillow rental application. You can see here some more comments. Zillow is not for screening, used for marketing only. Don't use Zillow, you will end up evicting another nightmare tenant. And this is just, anecdotal information from people online. So I went through as a property manager and identified what I think are some of the big pitfalls or shortfalls in the Zillow rental application. And they are incomplete criminal background checks, absent document authenticity verification, soft credit pulls instead of hard credit pulls, absent document content verification, out of date stale information, no prior rental history verification, no employment verification, no pet screening, and no reliable and objective review and decision context. So I'm going to show you kind of where these pitfalls are in each part of the application and give you some things that if you are going to lease your home out yourself and you are going to use the Zillow rental application, some things you should think about and be aware of. And just a reminder, you can use the rental profit gap finder on our website to model out what would it look like if I was able to keep a tenant in my home longer. What would it look like if I responded to maintenance requests and resolved them in a more timely manner? What would it look like if it took me less time to lease my property out? And this will help you see if you are losing money and you could be earning more money by shoring up some of the areas of your current property and just how much. So visit cdogmgt.com/rental profit gap finder to use that free tool and identify where you might have missing profits inside your current property management portfolio. Now, moving on to the rental application. Item number one, incomplete criminal background checks. This is from Zillow's website, and you can see here below are some state and local tenant screening laws to be aware of. This information may be incomplete or out of date. And it's just basically a disclosure that they're going to take a lot of protections and considerations for themselves into account when providing you with information. So one of the excerpts from that page is landlords and property managers accepting applications from whatever state will receive a modified background check from the time of COVID-19 emergency period in accordance with local laws. So what Zillow is telling you here is they're going to do a background check and they're going to get information, but then they're going to modify it because they don't think you're sophisticated enough or smart enough, or they don't think you need to know what the full contents is. So they're going to modify the contents and provide you with a redacted or a summarized or truncated, shortened version of it. So Zillow gets all the information, but you as the property owner, you are going to get to see what Zillow thinks you should be able to see. Another important caveat of the criminal background check is Zillow does not provide information on arrests. So they will provide information on convictions, but as far as arrests goes, that's going to be a blind spot. You may have tenant applicants who have been arrested, and there's nothing that's going to tell you that in the Zillow application. And just another key takeaway, they may choose to modify findings in the screening based on the area where you live. Another item to be aware of is the absent document authenticity verification. So Zillow will prompt the user to provide and upload documents, and they will collect documents for you and pass those along to you. What you're looking at right here are actual documents that our company received for proof of funds. This took place just in the last 12 months. And I'm showing you this because at first glance, even at second or third glance, this is a very authentic looking document. Our team immediately identified that these were fraudulent and doctored forms. And the reason we're able to do this is because we see thousands of income and employment and verification documents. We have experience in the nuances of the form and how it's supposed to look. And we have the ability to go in and use that experience to identify when someone's trying to deceive you. So, just be aware that Zillow is going to be giving you information. And if you're going to rely on that Zillow application, you need to be able to scrutinize the document and you need to be able to identify when you're viewing a falsified document. All right, a soft credit pull versus a hard credit pull. So, a hard credit pull, I'm showing you this because even in Zillow Home Loans own documentation, they say a hard credit pull may be necessary for a verified pre approval letter, which has the potential to impact your credit score. And what Zillow is saying here is before we put our money on the line, we're going to do a hard credit pull. We're not going to loan you money to buy a house. We're not going to put any of our own money at risk before we do a hard credit pull. However, when Zillow is putting a tenant into a house or giving you information to rely on, they don't use the same type of report. They use a soft credit pull. So it encourages tenants to apply earlier and more often. This is more application fee revenue for Zillow. And it gives you a report from an applicant who doesn't have to be quite so committed to your property. And generally, soft credit reports and hard credit reports contain the same information, but they don't always contain the same information. And so just remember that when you are relying on the credit pull from a Zillow rental application, you're getting a soft credit pull, which is something that Zillow themselves had said, we're not going to rely on that when we're lending our own money out to you. Moving on next, absent document contents verification. So Zillow collects these documents, like we saw bank statements that were fraudulent earlier, and they were doctored up bank statements. But Zillow will also just give you pay stubs and payment information. And the challenge here is that there are lots of different types of pay stubs. There's different payroll companies, there's commission, there is tips that get paid, there's hourly, there is salary, there's vacation pay and overtime pay and detail pay and short pay schedules and long pay schedules, all kinds of different income. And so while Zillow will give you a document that might look like what you're seeing here in the pictures, they're not going to give you the training and experience you need to decipher out of all these numbers and all this information, all the money flying around, how much goes into the tenant's pocket every month in order for them to be able to make rent payments. So something you do need to be aware of: garnishments, judgments, auto pay obligations, bankruptcy payment plans. All of these things may be reductions in income, which you may not see on a pay stub. Sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. But just by obtaining these documents and getting them, if you're not trained on how to pull out the information you need from them and how to pair them with other supplemental documents to verify what the amount of money going to net income is every month, you're going to have incomplete or impartial information to make your decision on. The next item, out of date or stale information. So you can see here from Zillow's website, they're saying credit and background check information is pulled once during the 30-day period. And so what that means is a tenant can have had an eviction filed against them, filed for a bankruptcy, stopped paying all their bills, been convicted of a crime 28 days ago, and you would not see any of that on their valid application from 30 days ago. Okay, 30 days is a long time, and tenants are wise enough to know if someone's getting ready to file an eviction on them or if someone's getting ready to fire them. Tenants are wise enough to go, let me go ahead and get an application in. Let me go ahead and get a report. Let me go ahead and make a move now before this stuff starts showing up on my permanent record. So you have to be very careful relying on this Zillow rental application, and you have to decide, is this too out of date, too stale, or should I actually pull an application and use something that's current from the time the tenant wants to move into my house? The next thing, no prior rental history verification. So Zillow does collect information on where the person says that they have lived. Tenants are known to oftentimes list relatives here or have friends vouch for them. There's all kinds of ways to defraud someone. So What we do at my company, and I suggest you do as a landlord, is we collect as part of the application the tenant's reported rental history, and then we independently collect it from the landlord. We verify who the landlord is, and we ask the landlord to submit the same exact information, and we see do those answers match. And this is kind of like I don't want to make tenant or application management or property management sound like law enforcement, but when you have two suspects in an interrogation room, one's in this room over here and one's in that room over there, and you go and you say, who did it, what happened to this guy, and then you leave that room and go to the other guy and say, hey, he sold you out, who did it, tell me what happened. The answers don't match up, something's up. And that's the same exact thing here, is that we're asking the tenant to self-report, but then we're independently getting the landlord to report the same exact information. We're looking for answers to match up exactly. We're also looking to see, was notice given on time? Were there lease violations? Were there insufficient funds on rental payments? Was there proper notice to vacate given? And a lot of times when you start asking for this information, especially if it's from a corporate landlord like an apartment complex, they're going to want to see appropriate authorizations. So you need to be sure you have appropriate authorizations to even request this information. What you can see here is an example of an authorization that we provide when we're doing rental history requests. But Zillow is not going to provide you with this important context about the history of the tenant's living situation. They may provide you the dates and locations reported, but there's a lot more information that you're going to want to have and you're going to want to review before making a final decision. Now, going to number 7, no employment verifications. So pay stubs are often 7 to 10 days after the last date worked for that pay period. So if I'm showing you a pay stub from 2 weeks ago, it's possible that I haven't been at that job for 3 weeks. Many employers use third-party services like the Work Number or Thomas and Company, which require business licensing or corporate authorizations before they'll release employment information to you. And modern day AI tools make it remarkably easy to forge not only employment documentation, but also actually employment IDs. So you have to be very careful and know what to look out for when you're verifying. Okay, I know my tenant has the money in their bank account today, let's say, to move in. And I know they received a paycheck 2 weeks ago that matches up with their salary. But if you move them in today and they got fired a week and a half ago, you're going to have problems in 30 days when it comes time to pay rent. So be sure you're verifying employment, not just collecting a pay stub. The next thing we're talking about, no pet screening. So Zillow will document whether or not the tenant says they have a pet, but they are not completing any pet screening. And be sure to visit cdogmgt.com and view our comprehensive pet screening page. We have a pet policy checklist you can use. There is a huge amount of fraud that occurs and misreporting that occurs between the general public, who 71% say they have pets, and tenants, who only about 46% say they have pets. So we put together a comprehensive guide for you as a landlord to be able to identify if your tenant actually has a pet, to know how to deal with emotional support animals and service animals and avoid fair housing violations, and to make sure you can safely screen pets and capture appropriate rental revenue and protect your investment in the event tenant does move in with a pet. The next thing, no reliable and no objective review or decision context. So Zillow does not have the decades of experience, the real world experience to be able to tell you, is this a risky tenant that I'm moving in, or is this a low risk tenant? Is this someone who objectively, without a doubt, meets my screening criteria, or is this someone who has submitted fraudulent documents or attempted to deceive me? So automated decision making, which you will see with some companies, I would argue is even worse, because you can see these automated approval recommendations based on self-reported data or limited context reports, which can cause you to make a decision, but give you a false sense of confidence in your decision. So you think, oh, I've got nothing to worry about. The report said XYZ. It was scored a 3, very low risk. You move them in, you take your eye off the ball thinking there's no issues, when really you may be using incomplete or inaccurate information that led to that automated approval decision. So be sure that you are making these approval decisions not only with accurate information, but making them yourself, not using automated models. As a landlord, as a property owner, tenant screening is obviously a very complex subject. So I want to invite you to visit cdogmgt.com and download our tenant screening verification checklist. You can use this to work through these complex issues and screen your tenants more thoroughly. And we hope that you wind up placing higher quality tenants who stay in your properties for longer, take better care of your properties, and leave less often. I'm Don Harkins. I'm a real estate broker. We serve Central Florida and the Space Coast. So if you do have any properties that you're going to be leasing or you have any questions on, be sure to give us a call or visit cdogmgt.com. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Take care.